Yeah, I've seen a couple more people trickle in the last few minutes. So
Wow, 63 participants.
mhm.
Excellent. Hey, should I start? Or should we let them, I guess we have to let them in and then we can start? Is that the way?
Well, no, they've been in. They've
They're
been in
in.
since we started. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock and we like to get started on time. My name is Tom Madru and I'm the co-chairman of the Trustee Development Committee for the Buckles organization. My co-chair is Caitlin Hull, who is the director in Maywood. She's up there as well. And we want to welcome you to this wonderful presentation. Trustee Orientation Basics. It's for the new and newer trustee. And you're going to hear a lot of things that will help you in your role as a trustee in your library. We're very pleased to have with us tonight Michele Stricker, the Deputy State Librarian, and Bob Keith, the Director of Library Law, State Aid, and Statistics for the New Jersey State Library. We just have a few things to discuss quickly before we get to their presentation, because they have a lot of good things to tell us. Number one, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. We also have a number of pre-loaded questions that you were good enough to send us beforehand, and we will entertain them first, and then we'll get to the other questions that are in the Q&A box. We've tried to also have a couple of other consortia with us tonight. First of all, from Buckles, our president, Adele Puccio, was unable to make it, but she has prepared a few words. And Darlene Swistock, if you wouldn't mind reading them, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Darlene Swistock from the Buckles office. And this is from Adele Puccio, as Tom said, Buckles president and also director at the library in Fair Lawn. I want to sincerely thank all of you for attending tonight's program. Trustee education is vitally important, so much so that it's codified into New Jersey state law. Public libraries depend upon the valuable volunteers who become trustees, and trustee education plays a significant role in library governance. You're part of a team that helps shape policies and guide your library into the future. Thank you for volunteering and for attending tonight's training session.
Thank you, Darlene, and thank you, Adele. We also have Eric Luzakis with us. Eric used to be an integral part of our Buckles organization as the head of our technical crew, and he has gone on to bigger and better things, and he is now the executive director of LMXAC. And Eric would like to say a few words. So please, if you would, Eric, take it away.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I wanted to extend my thanks for attending this evening's program. New Jersey's public libraries are vital for thriving communities, and they serve to provide open access to information. Their success isn't just the result of purchasing a collection of books or planning programs. It relies on the leadership of the library's trustees to best serve the community and to provide support for the fundamental mission of libraries. You've all taken an important step of furthering your education on how best to be a trustee. Whether you're here as a first-timer or for a refresher, understanding the way libraries are funded, importance of strategic plan, and how to ensure fiscal responsibility will serve you well for years to come. So on behalf of all the library consortia that your library may be part of, I want to thank you for your role as a trustee and the dedication to supporting your local library, and in turn, serving your communities. Also, thank you to the New Jersey State Library and Library Trustee Association and to Buckles for coordinating this training opportunity. I'll hand it back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Eric. And now, without further ado, I will turn it over to Michele and Bob and listen to their wonderful words of wisdom. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Hi, welcome. I think I'm going to share the screen with you.
Yep, I'm trying to find it here. There we go.
In the meantime, I want to thank everyone at Buckles for having Bob and I here tonight. for the presentation on understanding library law. If you're a brand new trustee, then welcome. If you're not, then, it's always great that you can come back and get a refresher on library law. And tonight, what I want to say is this is sort of a version of what we call library law light. We are going to be cramming a lot of stuff into a short amount of time. And I just would like you to know that everything that we're going to be discussing tonight, we can go into further detail as you follow us along through the year on many of the other programs that we do for library trustees and also for directors. But for tonight, there are a number of, I guess, hot button topics, or the I would say basic core knowledge that you really have to know. And here's the list. We're going to be talking a little bit about library funding, about per capita state aid, why it's recommended that you have a strategic plan. Let's talk about the return of excess funds process and how you go about doing that, because I know that's one of the questions. Trustee education in general, and the requirement that library trustees get continuing their professional development throughout the year. And then, of course, we're going to leave time at the end to answer as many as of your questions and answers, your questions as possible. And then just a reminder to please put those in the Q&A and then use the chat box to discuss and say hello among yourselves. So, Bob, I think you're onto the next slide. I think
Yep.
that's you.
So we just wanted to say first, like we always do before any of our presentations like this, we're not lawyers at all, not even close. We don't even play them on TV. The information you're about to receive does not constitute legal advice or opinion. And please consult with your board's own attorney, hopefully you have one, prior to taking any action regarding the forthcoming information.
I have that as you, Bob.
No, that's you.
Okay.
It's maroon.
So Bob threw me all off tonight by color coding.
Sorry.
All right. So first of all, we want to talk about there are several different types of library systems in New Jersey. We have the municipal and joint libraries. That's probably most of you on tonight in Buckles. That's the majority of libraries in New Jersey. And these libraries were originally formed by referendum. And we must note that all trustees are appointed by the mayor or the chief executive of the municipality. We also have county libraries that were also formed by referendum, but they have a board of library commissioners that are appointed by the county commissioners. And then we have association libraries, and I'm not sure if there's any of you on here tonight. Maybe if there are, you could post that in the chat. These are basically nonprofit 501(c)s, and I think there are around maybe 40-ish or so, Bob, probably better than I, left in the state of New Jersey. And I myself used to be a director of an association library. So those are basically the different types of library systems you have in the state of New Jersey. Bob, you and I have completely different slide decks.
Oh,
I'm
well,
just winging it. So
I think all the slides are the same, except
okay.
we might have jumbled things. I wanted you to talk about association libraries because you used to be a director.
So everything you need to really know about association libraries is here on this slide. They are formed like a 501(c)(3), and they are operated as nonprofits. But, just like my library where I used to be a director, we accepted aid from our municipality. And so what we tried to do was we tried to follow all of the rules as required by per capita state aid in order to get that funding, and so we would submit all of that information and it would be approved by the mayor and the council. But unlike a municipal library where you're going to be guaranteed to get your 1/3 of a mil, there's no guarantee at all that as an association library that your municipality has to fund you. It is totally at their discretion if they want to fund you and at how much they want to fund you. So I always thought it was a best practice to, since we were an association library, that I would try to keep as many hours and as many of the guidelines as possible according to per capita state aid, so that, you know, our municipality wouldn't think that we weren't doing a good enough job, and so cut our funding. But just to remind you, it is totally up to the municipality whether they want to fund an association library or not. To note, you still need to keep the library records, you know, confidential, so that rule applies to you too. And also, the Open Public Meetings Act and some other state laws may apply to an association library, even though they are a nonprofit.
Yeah, usually we said the Open Public Meetings Act may apply if, like in the second bullet, the association library receives public funds from the municipality. If they receive public funds at all, then those other things that usually apply to municipal libraries may also apply. But again, you need to talk to your lawyer to see if they believe it actually applies to you.
Yeah.
Now we go on to municipal libraries, which is definitely the majority of you, and their board membership. So the mayor or other chief executive officer of the municipality and the superintendent of schools are ex officio members of the library board, means they're members of the board because of their office. And they each have one vote, only one vote. Then the rest of the board is composed of from 5 to 7 citizens, which are appointed by the mayor, of which 4 have to be residents of the town. So not all trustees need to be residents of the municipality where the library is in. There can be other ones that either have moved away or are just from other towns, depending upon what the mayor wants to appoint. They, again, like I have underlined there, they all, though, must be citizens of the state and the country. For joint libraries, 3 citizens are appointed by the mayor of each member municipality. And there's an attorney general's opinion from 2005. Then we get questions about this a lot, that says appointed trustees cannot be employees of the municipality. We have that attorney general's opinion on the library law page of our website. If you have questions about that, you can ask Michelle and I, or show that AGO to your attorney. And if you're dealing with a situation like that, where there may have been employees from your municipality appointed to the board, it's, you know, Attorney General says you cannot do that. Furthermore, municipal library board organization, the terms of office of each board member are 5 years. They are staggered, which means that in any one year, 1 or sometimes 2 for 9-member boards, trustee terms are up for renewal. So every year, at least 1, if not 2, trustees have their terms expiring and can either be reappointed or have a new different trustee appointed in their place. If your library has their stagger is not correct, where you're having 3 or 4 trustees come up for their terms expiring, please contact me and I can work with you to get that stagger back on track. All of the trustee terms must start at the same time of the year. Usually it's January 1st. And if there are any vacancies, a trustee leaves or is removed from the board, then the mayor would appoint a new trustee to serve out the remainder of that, the unexpired remainder of that term, not an entire new term. Then we move on to officers of the board. So generally in January, most boards, I pretty much think all boards, have a reorganization meeting. And in that meeting, they hold an election from amongst their members for the 3 officer positions that are outlined in statute, which are president, treasurer, and secretary. I know some of you may have vice presidents, things like that. There's nothing specifically that says in the statute that you must have a vice president, but there's also nothing that says that you can't. So if you want to have a vice president, you know, and it's in your bylaws, then I don't see, I've never seen a law that, you know, prohibits that. all of the officer terms, the terms that they're serving the officership, not their entire board member term, are for 1 year or until a successor is elected. For instance, if they have to leave the board or step down from their position. The statute doesn't spell out the duties of each office, but your bylaws can. So you can put that in your bylaws as to what is expected of each office, what their duties and responsibilities are. The statute I quoted there says that the treasurer must be bonded, and you can talk to your municipality about how that bonding would actually work. You have to pay some money and things like that. And we also recommend, as far as for finance and depositing checks, that you require 2 signatures on your checking account, and that all trustees with signing authority be bonded or insured. So the treasurer must be bonded, but if you have, say you want the president and or the secretary to be able to sign checks, then we recommend that they also be bonded as well, just in case, just to make sure there's nothing going on. So powers of the board. The board has a lot of power over the library. Indeed, they run the library. We'll have the next slide after this talks about who actually runs the library. But the powers of the board include, they have the ability to purchase books and reading matter and other materials that will go into the library. They can hire librarians, and that the statute says hire librarians, but it's understood to mean any employee of the library. They can hire other necessary personnel. They can also fix the compensation of those employees, so they can determine how much they get paid, and what their raises would be and what criteria that would be for raises and things like that. They can rent rooms, which is generally understood to mean renting a room in another space for the library to occupy. For instance, if the library has some sort of disaster like a flood and needs to relocate to another location to continue to serve the public, then they're able to rent a place to do that. They're also allowed to construct buildings. They can save up capital funds and construct a new library building if they want. But I don't know if this is in a future slide. I kind of think it's not, so I'll say it now. The municipality always owns the building that the library is in, even if the library used its own funds to purchase it and to construct it. So that's something interesting to point out and remember. They're allowed to adopt rules and regulations, which basically means your bylaws that can govern yourself. It's generally, from what I've ever heard, you can't put anything in your bylaws that would contradict statute or regulation, either at the local, state, or federal level. So you can do things that aren't mentioned in those things, but you can't go beyond that and contradict what statute or regulation says. And then the catch-all term, they can do whatever is necessary to maintain the library. So they can, you name it. If you have to do something to maintain the library to continue to serve the public, then the board is allowed to do that. So now we're going to just switch to Michele really quick to the next 2 slides. Did you have these on your list?
Yes, but
Okay.
we're going to talk later. Okay. So one of the most important things I would like all the trustees to come away with tonight, and that is this slide right here that says autonomy. This is so important. The library board is completely autonomous and separate from the municipality, and the library board of trustees operates all aspects of the library. So it's not the mayor. The mayor doesn't run the library, even though he's an ex officio member. It's not the council. The council can't tell you what to do with the library. It is solely the responsibility of the board of trustees to run the library. And I think as such, you're probably one of the very few boards left that is autonomous in the state of New Jersey. So you control the library, you control the funding for the library. The municipality cannot tell you how to spend the funding, on what. They can't restrict your funding. This is all totally up to you. So it's very, very important for you to remember that you are an autonomous board, because a lot of times the municipality does not know that or remember that, because, they don't really know about library law. The funding might come, the 1/3 of the mill might come into their, come to them before it's dispersed to you. And so a lot of times the CFOs, the municipality thinks that you're just sort of like another branch of their local government, but you are not. You are totally autonomous, and you are solely responsible for running the library, and no one else does that but you. So that's the most important thing that I hope that you come away with tonight.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
There we go.
So now let's talk a little bit about the role of the mayor, because, the mayor does sit ex officio, on the board, and he appoints the citizen trustees. Now, the mayor gets one vote on the board, the same as everyone else, okay, only one vote. But the mayor is not like the CEO of the library, okay? He does, just because he's a mayor, he doesn't run the library. Remember, we said the library board is autonomous, but the mayor does sit on the board. And so as a member of the board, an ex officio member, he does not dictate what the library should do, okay? He's just one person there. And all trustees, do take, all appointed trustees do take an oath to the library, okay, while the mayor does take an oath when he's elected mayor to the town. However, Bob and I were discussing this recently, and I think I have this right, Bob. The mayor alternate who would sit in when the mayor can't make it and only have that one vote, that that alternate would take the oath to the library.
As again, we're not attorneys.
Right.
Your attorney may have different opinion about this, but I had this question posed to me just the other day, and I put together about 3 or 4 statutes that all point to the direction that that the alternates of the mayor or superintendent need to take the oath when they begin as an alternate. And again, there's no one statute that says they must, but a lot of other stuff is pointing in that direction. If you need that, please contact us. Our contact information will be at the end, and I can forward those statutes to you.
So yes, the mayor does sit on the board. Yes, the mayor does appoint you as trustees, but your loyalty is not to the mayor and the town. Your loyalty is to do the best job that you can to the library, and you'll take an oath to do so.
Okay. Sorry, I was typing something in the chat. Okay. Funding. Funding makes the world go round, or money makes the world go round. For municipal and joint municipal libraries, your minimum funding level is 1/3 of a mil. Buckles has no county libraries, but just for completeness sake, county libraries minimum funding is 1/15 of a mil. So what is 1/3 of a mil? It is a portion of the equalized valuation of all the real property in a town. Those figures are published by the Division of Taxation around October of each year for the following year. And I take those equalized valuation figures, plug them into a spreadsheet that multiplies them by a really long decimal. And it's like 0.000 and 6 threes. And then that result of that operation is a library's 1/3 of a mil minimum funding for that following year. The 1/3 of a mil is used to be part of a town's general fund. Used to just be like any other part of the town general fund, and was subject to the 2.5 or 2.5% cap on municipal budgets being raised. However, a statute was passed, put forward and championed by NJLA, that got the 1/3 of the mil library minimum funding onto a separate line on a resident's tax bill. And as such, that means it's not part of the municipality's general fund. It's also not part of the budget cap. So it can go up as much as a town's equalized valuation goes up. It can also go down, unfortunately, if real estate values drop. You can look at that, you can see that, any resident can see that on their tax bill and see how much they're funding the library at. The municipality can appropriate more money, but the additional funds, that extra money would come from the town's budget and the town's general fund and would be subject to the budget cap. So they couldn't increase it more than 2.5% year over year. Okay. The statute that I quote there requires that the third of the mill be paid to the library from the municipal CFO, municipalities funds, in no fewer than quarterly payments. So generally speaking, it's once a season. A lot of municipalities pay it on the second month of the season. It could be paid on the first or third, doesn't matter, but it has to be paid quarterly. We have been, and I'm sure there's going to be questions about this later on, we've been seeing a few times, not a lot, but certainly increasing, of towns that are slow or reluctant to pay the 1/3 of the mill. And they don't really have that option. It's a statute, they have to do it. And if your library is experiencing this, again, please contact us, and we can contact some other people in state government to help with that. The regulation that I cite there allows money to be kept in a reserve account in the custody of the municipality and dispersed upon the approval of library trustees. So some towns keep money so that they can pay the payroll and benefits for the library with all the municipalities' employees for efficiency's sake. It makes sense to do things, to have everybody under the same umbrella. It's a lot cheaper that way. But that is still the library's money. They may have all of your 1/3 of the mill in their accounts. That is still your money. They can't disapprove you spending it. They can't stop you from spending it. If you want it, they have to give it to you. We've also been in discussions about possibly doing trainings about memos of understanding between municipalities and libraries specifically for this, so that both the municipality and the library are both on the same page as to what each other's responsibility is in this relationship with funding and holding funding for the library and how it's dispersed and how it's used and things like that. So look for that in the coming months, hopefully. Any prior year's unexpended funds that are remaining from the 1/3 of the mill shall be retained in a library controlled account dedicated for eligible purposes. And we're going to get into that in the next slide. But that basically means that if the money is in the town's account and the library does not spend all of that money, then the town must transfer that extra money to the library to be put in their own account so that they can control it and use it as carry forward funds, or to reserve it for capital projects or whatever they may want to use it for.
Bob, can I just add a couple things here?
Sure. Yep.
On the slide. So yes, now you know that the funding needs to be turned over to you in no less than quarterly payments. And Bob had mentioned that, sometimes the municipality keeps your funds because they'll handle certain things for you, like payroll. Okay, which is great. And if you can have that kind of relationship with your municipality, that could be really a great relief and a great help to you if they could do things like that. Now, if they charge you for those things, you want to treat them just like you treat any other vendor that's where you have to pay bills. You want to keep track of what the money is that they're keeping in the account, what they're charging you to do payroll, or what they may charge you to do if they're going to do snow removal or repairs on your building and things like that. You just want to kind of keep track of that and have the municipality let you know what they are charging you for. And you could approve that just like you would do any other bill list. So it's best that you keep track of those charges, because sometimes, let's say it was snow removal or something, say they're charging you, X amount of dollars, and say you could get that for a quarter of the price. Well, it's up to you to spend the library's money wisely. So that's why you need to know what they're keeping, what kind of services that they're giving to you, what are they charging for, what aren't they charging for, and that you keep track of that and approve those expenses just like you would any other kind of a bill or an invoice from a vendor.
Yep, definitely. Excuse me. Next, so we said we were going to talk about eligible costs, and what goes along with that is ineligible costs. So eligible costs are any reasonable or necessary costs that the library incurs in connection with the direct operation of the library to provide library services. So buying books, eligible cost. Paying for repairs to the building, eligible cost. Ineligible costs. You cannot pay rent to the municipality at all. They can't charge you rent. They can't say, you're in our building, we own the building, you have to pay us rent now. You're in part of the building that the town hall is in. They can charge you for I don't think we have a slide on chargebacks,
No,
but maybe you want to talk about chargebacks. It's a fraught subject.
yeah. I did a little bit
Yeah.
before when I was talking about charging for snow removal or.
Yeah, that's basically it. So they can charge you for that kind of stuff. They can charge you if you share a building with the town for a portion of the utilities, things like that, but they can't charge you direct rent. They also, the library is also unable to pay for debt service. So if the library bonds for an addition to if the town bonds for an addition to the library, or the town bonds for a new building or something like that, and they say, you know what, we're going to bond for this, but you, the library, are on the hook to pay this debt off. You cannot do that. It is this regulation specifically prohibits libraries from doing that. So if you're in that situation, you can point them to this or contact us, and we can write it out for you. Capital expenses are also eligible costs. However, we really recommend very strongly that capital expenses are part of a written capital plan that's approved by the trustees, and that any funds that are set aside from operating into capital be done by a board resolution in conjunction with that capital plan. And we're going to touch on that later on when we talk about return of funds. Next is state aid, which I am neck deep in right now because we just passed the deadline for the surveys to be completed and all the paperwork to be signed in. And now my colleague and I are chasing down late people. So state aid is paid annually to municipalities and libraries. And the total current amount for the state aid fund is a little over $4.6 million. That is about a little over 40% of full funding. So this legislature does not fully fund the program. So anytime you get state aid, it is about 40% less than what it should be. The amount paid is based on the millage paid to the library. So if you get a third of the mill, you would get $1.25 per capita in your town. Again, that's reduced by 40% because the fund isn't fully funded, but that's how you can arrive at that figure. $1.25 times your population times 40% equals about what you should get, give or take, in any given year for your state aid payment. There is a 3-step application process to receive state aid. The library is responsible for filling out the annual survey. And that's a long survey that your director fills out every year. That's a couple hundred questions about the state of the library in the previous year. They submit that online to me. And the other thing that the library is responsible for is the accuracy certification, which if there's any board presidents in the audience, you have to sign off on before that can be submitted. You and the director sign off on that, and you certify that all the information you entered into the annual survey is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, and that you are adhering to all the statutes and regulations that govern your type of library. The third part of that state aid application packet is filled out by the municipality, and that is the state aid application. And this is where the municipal CFO certifies that they have paid, certifies the amount they have paid to the library in the previous year. And hopefully that amount is at least a third of the mill. Unfortunately, if it's not, and we've gone through and validated that it's not, that would reduce or eliminate a library state aid. It's a big minimum standard. It's actually not a minimum standard, it's a statute, but minimum standards are also important for state aid. They're contained in the state aid regulations, the citation I had there, and they are a set of standards that the library community has advised the state library that they agree will, if a library achieves those minimum standards, they will be providing adequate library service for the residents of their municipality. Most of the minimum standards are population based, so that it kind of scales with the size of your population. So, excuse me, a library that has, or a town that serves 20,000 people needs more staff than a town that serves 5,000 people, or a library that serves 5,000 people. And there are a number of things that they look at, such as number of employees, number of service hours, books in your collection, training hours, such as training for trustees, 7 hours of library related training per year for the entire board. And all of those we check for, run through a computer program to check to make sure that those minimum standards are adhered to. And if not, like I said, it could reduce the library state aid, but if they are, then the library would get their full amount of state aid. Just one note, the state aid application is sent out every January to municipal CFOs in their newsletter that comes from the Division of Local Government Services. So we talked about a third of the mill, the minimum funding amount by statute for municipal libraries. There was a law passed fairly recently that allows a town or the voters in a town to get together and launch a referendum to increase the minimum funding amount for that town's library for 10 years. So you see the first bullet lays out what you must do to, either the town can put the referendum onto the ballot, or the citizens of the town can get together and get the number of signatures that equals 15% of the votes cast in the last general election. They can do that, then they must put it on the ballot for the next election. Whatever the new higher rate is, cannot be, again, it has to be higher than a third of the mill. It can't be less than a third of the mill. So they can't get together and say, we don't need a third of the mill. They have to do it higher than that. And that new rate expires after 10 years, or in the tax year after a new referendum establishes a new rate. So that's how long it will last. The new rate is exempt from the 15% annual cap set forth in the statute above. That cap is basically, it says in the statute that a library's funding cannot increase more than 15% year over year unless the library writes a letter to the state librarian asking the state librarian for approval. I've been through 3 state librarians now, and I don't know of any state librarian that would say no to that. It seems a rather strange thing to put in statute, but it was probably from back in the midst of time when that made sense. In the first year that the new higher rate is in effect, the library is exempt from the excess fund statute, which we're going to get to in a second. And that statute also has the exact wording of the public question to put onto the ballot in the referendum, so that it has to be exactly the way the wording that is in the statute. There can't be any sort of changing around of the wording by the municipality or anybody else. Okay. Excuse me. Excess fund statute. This is a big one we get a lot well, we get less questions now than we used to, but we certainly do get a number of questions all the time about this. This only applies to municipal libraries, first of all. So any association libraries, you don't have to worry about this. It requires a library to, first of all, make an annual report to the municipality, which even before the return of funds statute, they've already had to do. It requires the library to return any surplus funds over in excess of 20% of the previous year's audited operating expenditures. So what does that mean? So say you are a library that spent $100,000 last year, and you have $25,000 in your reserves. So 20% of $100,000 is $20,000, and you have $25,000. So that $5,000 extra, that is subject to the return. Let's skip ahead a couple of bullets, unless that $5,000 is either from a donation, like a bequest or a will or something like that, or if those funds are legitimately restricted for a capital project, like we talked about before, about capital projects being having the capital plan and the money restricted for capital by a board resolution. As long as all those things are done, then it can be considered restricted for capital, and then it's immune from the return. But if neither of those things are true, then that theoretical, hypothetical $5,000 would be subject to the return. Once you identify that using the packet that is at that link in the 5th bullet, there's a spreadsheet in that packet that you put in all your financial information that it requests. And at the end, it will tell you if you have anything to return in that year. If you do, you must complete the rest of the application and send it along to me. Michele and I go through it, look at it for accuracy and completeness, and also whether the library is possibly deficient in anywhere. For instance, if in the previous year they missed a minimum standard for something, they didn't have enough employees or something like that, we might recommend that that money used to bring that minimum level of that minimum standard up to compliance. Yep.
I think that the library has to be in 100% compliance with state aid minimum standards.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, like if they had one thing that they missed, then that probably would make the application not be valid, and we'd have to reject it. And then that we would have the state librarian write you a letter and say you should use that money to bring that minimum standard up to compliance. The return of excess funds can only be approved by the state librarian. So we've also had some questions recently of towns that say to a library, we know you have excess funds. We've seen your financials. We know you're holding a lot of money. We want that money. Give it to us. You're not allowed to do that. You have to go through with this application process. You have to fill everything out and send it all into us. And then we, Michele and I, make a recommendation to the state librarian, and it is up to her whether to approve the transfer or not. And if she disapproves it, you're not allowed to return it.
One thing too, we've also, not too often, but we've also seen where the trustees want to, for some reason be thought of well liked by the municipality, and so they say, we're going to not spend our library funds, we're going to save it up so that we can return funds to the municipality for whatever reason that they would think to do that. But just remember, that's not why you're here, and I'm not saying, and Bob and I are not saying that you're just going to spend all your money because you have it, without spending it on worthwhile things for running the library. But you also can't say, I'm not going to spend that money on the library because I want to look good to the mayor and the municipality by returning funds. You can't think that way either.
Exactly. Your library board trustees, you are in your community, of course, you're looking out for your community and trying to do the best, trying to keep a good relationship with the municipality, but there are limits. You could say, if they say, we know you have funds, we want you to give them to us. You can say, well, you know what, we really want to help. We want to help out with the town. We agree, but there's a statute that says we need to do this application first. And so we have to do that, and we have to wait on that, wait for the state library to render their decision. And then if they're okay with it, which generally speaking, can't remember the last time we've ever denied a town for that. It's not to say it wouldn't happen in the future, but it doesn't happen often. And so you just might have to wait a little bit to be able to return that money, as long as you're in compliance with everything. So,
Kind of the confusion that people have, at least I've had a lot of questions on it with return of funds. People will say, well, I had excess funds in 2021, but I didn't have them in 2022. So I'll just do the return for 2021. And it doesn't work like that. All funding just gets rolled over to, the following year. And we take the return of funds applications on a rolling basis. There's no time of year when it's due, there's no cutoff point for it. But everything that you've had before over through all the years is going to just continue to roll forward and be part of that last year's return of access funds packet, if that's what you're going to submit to us. So there's no, parsing out or separating the years of those budget numbers.
Yeah, it's only, like you said it perfectly. It's only the current year. I mean, you have no idea if you say, like you said, in 2021, we had excess funds. Well, maybe you spent them between then and now. They might not be there right now. So that's why you need to do it in the current year, the current year's financial information, and follow all the directions in the packet. And again, if you hadn't spent it, that money will still be there. So
it's onerous, and there are a lot of parts to the return of funding application. But it really is there for the library's protection, so that the towns just can't take back the money.
Yep.
So if you look at it that way, it's really, we're here to protect that, and just to make sure that everything is done correctly, so that if you have a good case for keeping your funding, we want to make sure that you absolutely are able to do so.
Exactly. And one last thing before we go to the next slide. I lost it. Probably wasn't important.
It'll come back.
Maybe it wasn't important. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Two last things about the excess fund statute. This doesn't apply so much in Buckles territory. We've seen this happen in areas with county libraries. So say a town that is a member of a county library system, there's a part of the county library law that says that there's a process for a town to pull away from the county library, to go its own way. And part of that process means that they can't just not have library service. They have to leave the county library system and form their own municipal library at the same time. I'm not going to say anybody is doing anything bad or whatever, but it certainly seems people had the wrong intentions when doing that. And we're looking at those libraries as return of funds piggy banks, so to speak, where they would fund them, but they were so tiny that they couldn't possibly spend all of a third of the mill in a year, and they'd have excess funds, and then the town could take that back and rinse and repeat. So the statute I quoted there basically shuts that off. And I'm just going to read it. The Board of Trustees of Municipal Free Public Library, established after the effective date of Public Law 2008, so basically after 2008, shall not adopt a resolution of intent pursuant to this subsection, excess fund statute, before the 8th budget year following its establishment. So if a new library is created after 2008, which all libraries now are, they can't do return of funds for 8 years after their creation. So that stopped that. And then the other thing to keep in mind, this is for everybody, when you're having your town come approach you and say, I know you have money, give it back, and you say, well, we have to do this application. The other thing you need to say is, did you know, municipal person, clerk, council member, mayor, et cetera, that any money that we return can only be used to lower the property tax burden of the residents of the town. They can't be used to buy a new police car, can't be used to buy a new dump truck for DPW, can't be used to hire more people. It can only be used to reduce the amount the municipality is required to raise by local property tax levy for municipal purposes. That's it. So that if you put that in front of them, they may hopefully do a double take and then might breathe down your neck a little less. So next, this is Michelle's bailiwick. I know nothing about strategic planning, so take it away.
We'll talk a little bit about strategic planning, and during the year, we do have webinars on how to write a strategic plan. But in general, it is a best practice for every library to have what's called a strategic plan or a long range plan. Now, these have been any length from 3 to 5 years. 5 years is a long time now to have one strategic plan. We generally recommend 3 years, because so much can happen in 3 years. Before, we were talking about, look what happens in 3 years with technology, but look what happened in 3 years with the pandemic and how, we had to do a major pivot. So your strategic plan, we recommend that you have that. It's really for a job of the Board of Trustees. It's one of the main responsibilities for the Board of Trustees to take on, although your director will be, a very powerful alliance in this and probably organize everything for you to get the strategic plan moving. You'll have a strategic planning committee. But basically, we want you all and encourage you all to have a strategic plan. Now, I do a lot of work with having how to write a strategic plan without a consultant, because I know that, hiring a consultant to write a plan can cost some money. But if you have any money, and of course, if you're thinking about returning excess funds, then you have some money, I would really recommend hiring a consultant to write the plan for you, because as you can see on the list here, there are basic elements that must be included in every strategic plan: the vision statement, the mission statement, goals and strategies, but your budget, your timeline, how you're going to meet those goals, an evaluation of your plan. And the most important part, and the part that takes the most time, is this information gathering and analysis. That's also called an environment scan, a community scan. And this is the part that takes the most time, because you have to go out into your community. You have to find the stakeholders who are not using your library. Who are the people not using your library, and what are the services that they need, so that you can then write your strategic plan to get those people to use the library. That doesn't necessarily mean get them into the library, though that's always nice. But remember, we think of libraries these days, without walls too. So what kind of services can you be providing to the people out into your community? That's the hardest part. That's a lot of the times why I recommend that you get a consultant for that, because you want to take 3 to 4 months tops to have your plan written. Okay. If you go any longer than 3 to 4 months, then, if it takes a year, then you're just going to have to start all over again. Now, a strategic plan is not required by the state library. You don't have to do it. It's best if you do. However, if you do want to submit a return of funding application, you must have a strategic plan. And your strategic plan must have like all of the things that I outlined on this slide. And so that's one of the things when Bob and I review the application, we're going to take your plan, we're going to look through each of these sections to make sure that you have them completed, especially this information gathering piece. And then we're also going to take a look at what your goals are, the things that you want to do for your library. You want to build a new children's wing, you want a new computer lab, you want to hire 3 more librarians, whatever it is. We're going to take a look at the goals and strategies that you set out in your strategic plan, and we're going to compare that to your budget. So if you say you need these things, have you written it into your budget to cover the things that you say that are needed? Because if not, then, we're going to just say something's not jiving here. You've got to make these things mesh. You've got to cover and make sure your budget covers the things that you're called for in your goals. And that's where you kind of get sticky and us not approving, and the state librarian not approving the return of funds application. So I do have a lot of resources on strategic planning on the state library website under the trustee resource page. You can always contact me if you would like further information. But again, the plan is not required, but we highly recommend it. You will need it for your return of funds application. And you will need to have each of these pieces completed. Okay. And then I think this one is me too. Trustee education. This is your continuing education, like you're all here tonight. So if you have one trustee here tonight on the board, you have, say, 1 hour of continuing education. If we talk for 2 hours, you have 2 hours. But really all you need is 7 hours per year per board to fulfill your per capita state aid requirements for continuing education. And between the New Jersey State Library, your Buckles organization, NJLTA, the New Jersey Library Trustee Association, we offer you lots of opportunities, lots of ways for you to get that 7 hours very, very easily throughout the year. We've got 2 of them that we put up on the slide here. One of them is short takes for library trustees. And also related to that is the Trustee Academy. So these are 2 sets of webinars that are done by United for Libraries from the American Library Association. And they're the Trustee and Friends division of ALA. And we both, the New Jersey State Library and NJLTA, we split the licensing of this every year so that you can have access to both short takes, which are 10-minute videos to watch, and then the Trustee Academy, which they're about 40-minute videos or 30-minute videos with some Q&A at the end that you could watch at your leisure whenever you want. You could watch them by yourself. You could watch them with a group of your trustees. You can show them at a board meeting, which is really a great thing to do. Show the video at a board meeting, and then have your board discuss the questions and answers at the end. So we provide lots of opportunities for you along the way to get those 7 hours. And the other thing that Bob and I do in conjunction with, we call them the PATs, Pat Pavlak and Pat Tumulty from the New Jersey Library Trustee Association, we have a monthly trustee check-ins once a month via Zoom for about an hour. And we also do them for directors. So we usually do directors on Tuesday afternoon and trustees Thursday evenings at 7. And pretty much once in a while, we'll have a topic that we'll review, but this is like open Q&A for you, and you can remain anonymous, or you can put your name in the chat if you want. But this is just kind of a free for all to answer any concerns, any questions, anything that's happening at your library that you want to share with us. It's sometimes easier for us to do that rather than having you send us an email and we look at that and say, well, okay, that would require like a 3-page email to answer that. So that's why we all started doing these monthly check-ins. So you can check with us. We usually send an announcement out ahead of time on the NJ PubLibs listserv, and that goes to your directors. So you want to make sure that you ask your directors all the time, is there, hey, any information come through for the trustees on the NJ PubLibs listserv for us, because your director should be keeping you apprised of anything that's happening. But also NJLTA will also send out information about the trainings that they do either on their own or jointly with the New Jersey State Library. So
Yep.
Plenty of opportunities for you.
Yeah, so that was one of the silver linings of the COVID lockdown when we were all home and unable to go to work, is libraries needed to feel some connection during that time, and we needed to feel connection with the libraries to make sure they're doing okay and things like that. And so we started these check-ins, and it's done rather well. I've been just shy of threatened if I ever stop them. So So I think I'll keep going with them and stuff. Michele, there's one more slide for you.
Okay, so yeah, I really want to pitch this because last month we had truly an amazing presentation by Dr. Thomas Lipinski on national case law as related to libraries. And Dr. Lipinski has a master's degree in library science. He's a lawyer and he's also a professor. And he did about by the time it was done, it was about 2 hours, including the Q&A on national case law. And it was really a different perspective than we've ever offered before. We do a lot of things like this that have to do with New Jersey library law. And we use Michael Cerrone all the time, who's wonderful for knowing the most about really library law. But this was really from a national perspective. Dr. Lipinski talked about the cases that came up federally that, made a lot of the laws that we now find in libraries, such things as like, what can you display? What can you put out on display? What can you put in your display cases? What do you do about somebody who sleeps in the library or somebody who wants to bring in their garbage and, in the library?
Or take a bath in the bathroom.
Yeah, it was like really, really fascinating. There was a lot of Q&A. So we have one more session with him on April 4th. This is going to be a good one because this is happening now. This is going to be about the content, the book objections, and the challenges, the book challenges that are happening all over the country, the case law that pertains to them. Yes, it's happening here in New Jersey. We've been reading about a lot of cases in libraries and especially in school libraries where we're getting a lot of people coming in and demanding that we remove, all the books from the library until they can be vetted for, different kinds of, pornography or, as such. We have librarians being called groomers, and you know the story. But this is really going to be a great session with Dr. Lipinski where he's going to talk about all the national case law on these issues. And I hope that you will join us April 4th. It's free, 7 p.m. and there's the registration link.
Yeah, please click that link and you can't click the link because it's a PowerPoint, but I already emailed these slides to Mimi, and she will get them out to all of you as quick as she can, I'm sure. And then you can click the link in there to register. And just so you know, we're unable to record this session and the previous session due to Dr. Lipinski's request, but we are, he does give us his slide deck. We've posted the first slide deck on our website, and I can put the link for that in the chat so everybody can see it. And his perspective, just to jump off a little bit what Michele said, our perspective here and in other things that we do is definitely very New Jersey focused, very focused on New Jersey statutes, New Jersey regulations, how libraries operate in New Jersey, things like that. But a lot of the things that are of real concern now have a national aspect. And we get into questions of federal statutes, federal regulations, constitutional law, things that we definitely are. I mean, we're barely qualified to talk about this. We're definitely not qualified to talk about that. So, so Dr. Lipinski is basically his life's work is doing this sort of thing, helping libraries with national questions and national issues that and instead of just looking at statutes, also looking, like Michele said, at case law and precedent with court cases that libraries have been litigants in, and seeing what has happened with those in these subject areas. So the first one was excellent. This one is going to be a real, as the kids say, a real banger.
Bob, there's nothing like hearing it because we can send you the slides, but they're so dense. I mean, really, unless you're a lawyer,
you need explanation, and that triggered something in my brain. It's great that everybody is going to, I hope everybody here can go to it. your directors, trustees, everybody. But what this is really, you need to really give this to is your attorney. They need to see these slides. They can sign up for it too. They need to hear this because they are the ones that are going to be protecting you possibly from these things if they crop up, and they need to know it firsthand so that they can assimilate it and use it for you.
And
So
businesses have more
go
power than you think. So it's really heartening to hear what he has to say and to have a case law to back it up.
Yep. Okay. Can we pause just one quick second? Because I do want to get that the link for those slides before I forget and get sidetracked. Okay.
But I do think that is the end of the general presentation, other than the ending thank you slide. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, there are a lot of questions in the queue that Bob and I are going to answer. To our hosts, I don't know if you have a hard cutoff time or not, but Bob and I are here, so we really want to get to answer as many questions as we can. And you know, Bob and I are always available for you to contact, to email, to give us a call. That's why we're here. Even if you feel it might be an insignificant question, please don't feel that way. That's why we're here. And you can contact us at any time. We're really happy to talk to you and try to give you the answers that you need. So thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. And I was typing, but our contact information is there. Please email us with any questions you may have that either don't get answered here or that you have later on down the road. So since I'm host, I can start answering questions. I have access to the Q&A. I don't know if anybody else from our hosts or our actual hosts wants to jump on and do it. I don't want to take it away from them. Hello.
No, Bob, do you want me to read them or?
Tom, if you want to, you or whoever else, if you want to go through them, the only thing I ask is that you don't delete any of the questions, because Darlene asked me to try to download them in some way so that so she has a record of them. So if you say answer live or something like that, just don't clear it away after it's been answered live. Don't press the done button.
Yeah. Okay, well, I was going to start with the questions that came in beforehand,
Yes.
if that's all right.
That's perfect.
Okay, the first one is, how does one implement the return of excess funds process? I believe you covered that pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's think we really beat that horse a lot.
You contact us for further info if you need more.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I'm gonna put the I'll put the link to the packet for return of funds in the chat so that everybody can see it and download it if they want to take a look at it.
Okay.
All right. Next.
I'm sorry. The second question was, are most library employees in a union?
I don't have stats on that. We don't ask that on the survey. We could definitely ask that on the survey. They would probably be pretty helpful to know that. And libraries that are civil service libraries, it doesn't help the union question, but I know if you're in a town the town is civil service, then the library is also civil service. As far as unions go, I don't have a sense. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Second question on that one was about, do town libraries allow people to come and just sit in the library during open hours? I know I can speak for mine. We during the pandemic, we were much more concerned about people staying in there more than 15-20 minutes at a time. But people do come in and do sit for a while during open hours. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know of any libraries that really restrict that or anything, but you know, if they're very crowded, I don't even know. I don't think you could, I mean, unless you had some sort of fire capacity issue, but that's the only thing I can think of. They can't, it's very difficult, Dr. Lipinski said in his first presentation, it's very difficult to remove a patron from the library and keep them out of the library. There are a number of constitutional rights that could possibly be infringed by that chain of events. So, it's, again, look at his slides that I posted in the chat and talk to your attorney about it.
And take a look at that, because you might want to have some kind of policies. Like if somebody comes in and they're sitting at a computer station and not doing anything, and somebody's waiting to use a computer, obviously, they're not going to move, but.
Yeah.
There were a couple of questions about who can be on the board. There's one in this package, and there was at least one in the chat box, so I'll combine them. Basically, one was our relatives of our relatives of different households living in the same town able to be trustees of a library board?
As far as I know, there's no statute that I know of that would prevent that. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get beyond that into nepotism laws and things like that.
It is not.
Would that comment include people in the same household, a husband and a wife?
It's not best practice.
It's not the best practice, but again, there's nothing to prevent it. If they want to do it, I don't know of any way to stop it.
Yeah. Someone also asked in the chat box when you were talking about membership and how municipal employees are not allowed to be also library trustees. The question came up was, would a teacher who's a member of the Board of works for the Board of Education, would they be allowed to be trustees?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's a different kind of relationship with the municipality that funds the library, and the mayor appoints the trustees. And the mayor, all of the stuff in the municipal library statutes all points in the direction of limiting the power of the municipality over the library. They already have pretty good amount of power. They fund the library. They the mayor appoints all the trustees, but that's where the legislators kind of wanted it to stop. And so there's with the school board and the school district, there's not that financial relationship. There's not that appointing relationship. The superintendent of schools is an ex officio member, has one vote on the board, and that's it. They don't have any other power that they can even theoretically exercise over the library. So I have definitely seen teachers be on boards that are in the same school district as the library, and their superintendent is also a member of the board. And they each get one vote. So
yeah.
You were going to say something, Michelle, I thought?
Yeah, that exactly. It's like their pod is over there on the education, it's not the municipal stuff from the municipal.
There were two others. Are there any statistics available that would tell us what percentage of libraries do in fact ask their boroughs and receive from their boroughs more than a third of a mil?
We had talked about this a little bit before we really started, but I don't have the exact statistic off the top of my head right now. I can find it out, certainly, and email it to Mimi or whoever else, and she can put it out to the attendees. I seem to remember when I've run it in the past, it is around 50% of municipal libraries are funded over a third of the mil, not even at a third of the mil. It's a sizable amount, and some are funded at a few dollars over a third of the mil, so they count. But there's some libraries that especially are in towns that have very low property values, that have a large population and can't afford to run a library at the level that their population would require with just a third of the mill. And so they have to give them more in order to have a library run at all. I'm thinking of places like Trenton, Elizabeth, I think Patterson, places like that are run at a fifth of a mill. I mean, I'm sorry, not a fifth mill, a half of a mill or more. And so, so again, we have that on the high end, and then the people that just get 1/3 of the mill, and yeah.
Okay, I'm going now to the questions that were in the chat box. I'm sorry, that were in the Q&A box. There are many libraries that share services with the municipality. Example, one payroll system. Oh, somebody just put something.
Sorry, I'm notorious for doing that to Michelle when we're in our things about moving questions around. I apologize.
That's okay. One payroll system, daily services provided. Should libraries that are given these services have some documentation between them and the municipality, such as a shared services agreement?
We recommend it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and we did talk, well, yes, you can craft your own shared services agreement. We talked about that, I remember earlier, and Bob, feel free to add, but you want to ask if the municipality is providing these services, what are they charging you? And then you want to approve, just like you would a bill list, you want to approve the municipality charging you for these services. And then you need to do due diligence to make sure that it's a fair price too. So yes. Bob, anything to add to that?
I was just going to say this touches on some other subjects that we mentioned, like chargebacks and libraries withholding or towns withholding libraries 1/3 of the mill. And like you said, the chargeback specifically referring to towns charging for services that they pay, that they ostensibly give to the library, but they may be charging more than what those services are worth, sometimes a lot more. And that is where, like Michele said, if you feel like that is the case, you as a board are well within your rights to go out and get quotes for other companies to provide those services. Say your town is saying, we're going to charge you $100,000 this year for snow removal. Well, unless you were in the very north of the state, you didn't get much snow or any snow. And so you could say, well, that seems like an awful lot. Let's go out and get some quotes and see what other, snow removal companies are charging. And, if you say they're charging, a significant portion less than that, you can go back to the town and say, we got these quotes, they're charging a lot more. We want to have a good relationship with you, but we also don't want to spend money that we could use to do other things. And this kind of all comes down to a political question. Are you willing, or is the situation bad enough that you might be willing to spend political capital and possible goodwill to remedy? And that's a question that only you as the board can answer in your current situation. And but again, I would say that the last thing about a shared services agreement or a memo of understanding, that is something, there's a lot of quote unquote gentlemen's agreements or gentle people's agreements throughout the state that deal with this sort of thing, that there is, back in the midst of time, an agreement was made between the library and the municipality to have this relationship, and it hasn't been addressed in decades. And maybe the situation in successive mayoral regimes has gotten untenable for the library. And so having your attorney, again, hopefully you have an attorney, draw up a memo of understanding between you, the library trustees, and the municipality, outlining the services they're providing for you, how much you are willing to pay for those services, and a length of time for that memo of understanding where at the end of that you'll revisit it, I think is very important and should be really looked into.
Hey, thank you. I think you may have touched on this, but can a fire department clerk be on the board? I would assume that would mean whether your fire department were employees or volunteers.
Yeah, I saw that question, and that would be my first question to that person is the fire department a department of the town? Or are they a volunteer department where they're not part of the municipality's general fund, things like that? If they're separate, I don't see why not. However, if they are a department of the town, then that Attorney General's opinion we quoted before would tend to say that no, they couldn't do that.
Are there resources for library grant applications and opportunities available as to different resources for getting those?
I could try this one, Bob.
Mhm.
So mainly when we apply for grants at the New Jersey State Library, we're pretty much, our grants come from the federal grants from the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. And when the state library gets a grant, mostly we'll be doing programs that in some way benefit the public libraries and build capacity of public libraries. There are some situations, and we just had a few years of very unusual ones. We had the CARES Act and we had the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding coming. And those were grants that went directly out. They came to the state and then for the state library to administer. And there were, I think over the last couple of years, there were well over 100 grants that the New Jersey State Library put out with these ARPA funds directly for public libraries to apply. Now, that doesn't happen. In fact, I don't ever remember that happening. It was just so unusual. And a lot of grant funding is hard to come by, but for your own individual library, you kind of need to do that research on your own. If there's an opportunity that the state library finds that's going to be open for public libraries, we'll put that out both as a news item in our NJSL Direct newsletter. And we'll also put that out straight to your library directors on the NJ Pub Libs listserv. So they'll be made aware of funding opportunities that are available for libraries. But then you're going to kind of be on your own, your director, looking for grants locally or statewide. The New Jersey State Library has a foundation center, and that you could do research on a lot of companies that will offer grant opportunities to libraries that you might want to apply for. So you kind of have to do your own research on that based on what you want. When I was a library director, I had a lot of success going to local corporations for bigger types of grants. They were always ready to help with a kind of a project that we needed to be done. So yeah, we'll let you know if there's something available, but check on your own. Also, you can use our foundation center. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You might be able to, smaller public libraries have been able to get grants through other organizations like the National Endowment for the Humanities or the National Endowment for the Arts. So it's the kind of things they put out their grant lists every year. You've got to keep up on, you've got to check with and see what they're offering. So those are just a couple things I can think of. We have been trying to give out more grants under a new state librarian. She's been really great about trying to give out more grants to public libraries. And I think that we'll continue to do so. So just keep an eye out on our website and on those resources through the state library I mentioned.
Next one is regarding the state aid calculation. It's pretty well, you mentioned the formula in your presentation, but the person wants to know, is there any other way to enhance that calculation by perceived need, or can a library make any other case for getting a different amount from the state aid, or is it just simply a cut and dried formula?
You're muted, Bob.
Sorry. It is a cut and dried formula. There's no wiggle room There's no way to get more money for your library from state aid. It is a formula in the statute, and there's no way for us to change it. I will say though that since the state aid fund, the overall fund is a limited pot of money, that money has to be divided, not equally within the bounds of each individual library's formula, which is based on their population and the amount they were funded by their municipality, so that when we do state aid, we start out with that main formula, population times about 1.5, 1.25, 1.5 if you're very well funded, like at a $500,000 or more. And then we multiply that by a decimal that is used basically to lower everyone's state aid payment so that we don't overspend the fund, nor do we underspend the fund. So I fine-tune that decimal so that every dollar in the fund is distributed to libraries each year. And that basically means, for the question about their state aid going up or down each year, if you're adhering to all minimum standards, you would think your state aid amount will stay the same no matter what. And that's really not true, because some libraries will not adhere to minimum standards one year and possibly lose money. And then the next year, they may achieve those minimum standards and then get that money back. So when they lose money in that first year, the money that they lost is then spread out over all the libraries that get state aid that year. And then so everybody's amounts goes up by a small amount. And then with the next year, if they achieve those minimum standards and get the money they were entitled to, that money then comes from everybody else's payment as is compared to the previous year. So when you compare the first year to the second year will look like everybody's payments dropped a little bit, but in the first year, everybody's payments went up a little bit. So it's really just averaging out over the 2 years. But to directly answer the question, yeah, there is no way to appeal for more money to do that. If a library wants more money, like we spoke of just a little while ago, grants are your best option. Going to your town and town council meetings, having your board president, maybe the treasurer, the director go there and make an impassioned plea to the mayor and council to be given more money, to demonstrate what you could do with that money for the residents of the town. But unfortunately, state aid is pretty locked down.
If your library needs renovation, what, if any, involvement does your municipality need to have, since they may own the building?
Do you want to take this, Michele, or do you want me to?
Well, we can both try. Ideally, if you have a great relationship with your municipality, the municipality does own the building. It would be really, really nice of them if they would pay for the renovations to the building, which is not always the case. A lot of times they say, well, okay, you're in the building, you need to put the new roof on, you need the new HVAC back, and those are why, that's perfectly fine if they're going to say that, but that means that you've got to save in a capital account for those kind of renovations. And then, and this is the part I'm not sure of, and Bob, maybe you can help me out. I mean, I'm going to assume you can't just say, I'm going to put a new roof on there and go ahead and do it without the municipality's approval and showing them all the plans and, getting to sign off on it since they own the building.
As far as I know, yeah. Again, they own the building. They must let you use it as a library. But this is again, like what Michele was talking about. This is a real, not a gray area, because it's supposed to be a certain way. The municipality owns the library. If there's something wrong with it, they should pay for it. If your house is leaking, if your roof is leaking in your house, you're not going to have somebody down the street pay for your roof. You're going to pay for your roof. You own it. You're there. But a better analogy would be, if I'm owning the house and the roof's leaking, but there's a renter here, should I make the renter pay for it? Or should I, the landlord, pay for it? And I tend to think the landlord should pay for it. They're the property owner. However, the reality is that have been times where the municipality will just say, I'm sorry, we don't have the money, or I'm sorry, we don't want to pay for that. And you're just going to have to either buy a bunch of buckets or for the leaky roof, or raise the money on your own. And so a lot of libraries are, saddled with that decision. What do we do? And it's tough. This is why like having some sort of a capital plan that is a rolling, not a rolling, but an every 3-year updated capital plan that doesn't just, look at, surface stuff, but really go in there and get a building inspection and have the person say, your roof is going to need to be changed in 10 years. You might want to start setting money aside for that now so that it's not painful in the present. Was that?
You do that in your capital.
In capital, yeah, but as part of your plan with a board resolution, et cetera, et cetera.
And you're
So,
the money, as long as you say, I'm saving for a new roof, it's going to cost $250,000. Here's the estimate. It's going to take us several years to save up for that. Then you can keep adding as you have the money to your account.
Yep, exactly. All right.
Okay,
Next.
I've got a two-parter on for you, Michele, on strategic plans.
Okay.
Do they typically happen on a regular? Does planning process happen on a regular basis or on an as-need basis?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I think that is, and if not, you can put in Laura, you can either put in there that I'm off base with this, or you can talk to me or give me a call. So typically when you do a strategic plan, you're going to start out brand new, say with a 3-year plan. Okay. So in that plan, you're going to outline everything that you want to do with your goals, and you're going to have your strategies on how you're going to reach those goals. And then you're going to have benchmarks of what you're going to do in year 1 and year 2 and year 3. All right. So now when you get to the end of year 3 or 5 or 4, or however long your plan is, you have to do a brand new plan. You can't add on a year and add on a year and just keep it going indefinitely. All right. Now, year 1, 2, and 3, certainly some things don't go according to plan. Some big financial crisis might happen. The pandemic, look what happened with the pandemic. And so what you will write in your strategic plan, you'll give updates every year in year 1 to 3 and say, I achieved this, like I said I was in year 1, or I didn't because of this. So you're going to do an update. But once you get to the end of the plan, you start a brand new plan, and you don't keep adding on a year, adding to infinity. I think that's what you're asking, Lori. I hope so.
Do you provide guidelines or templates to help trustees formulate plans?
So if you will go on our website under the trustee section, under core knowledge, I believe you're going to find a few examples of strategic plans. Now, there really is no template. There are sections, like I outlined in this presentation. I gave you the sections of a plan. So every plan has to have those sections. I think a good strategic plan for a small to mid-sized library is going to be 10 pages or so, and have maybe 3 to 5 goals, and not go on forever, because you certainly can't achieve all of that. So I do have some templates on there, but I say that with a caveat in that those templates are old, and we're redoing our website. We're currently going through things and deciding what to get off of there, what we're going to be keeping on there. And just like libraries have changed to fit the needs of the people in the community, strategic plans have changed. And whereas before it used to be the plans were all about the library, you could just take out the word library in a strategic plan now and substitute the word community. So it's more, the plans are more geared toward, an inclusive community and providing the opportunities and the things that the people in your community need. So one, you could look at our website, and two, you could just Google any other strategic plan, library strategic plan, online. You could use that as a template, take from it what you need and don't use what you don't need. Hope that's helpful.
Two more, I think. One is, oops. Sorry. You've mentioned attorneys a few times. Is it a good idea for trustees to secure an attorney, a library attorney, to help review things, or is this more usually done on an as-needed basis?
It can be both. It often depends on a lot of things, such as the situation the library finds itself in currently. If you haven't had an attorney and you're suddenly faced with a legal issue, certainly getting your own attorney, and we stress your own attorney as far as the library board's own attorney versus using the town's attorney, because in the past we have seen that a significant portion, maybe not all, but of the things that a library would need an attorney for are to deal with the municipality. And if the library is using the municipality's attorney, well, they're going to serve their master first, and their master is the municipality. So we always say, talk to your own attorney. That can be, you can, a lot of attorneys will allow you to have them on retainer so that they will be your attorney all the time, can answer them questions all the time. They'll come to your board meetings as much as you want. And rolling that back as far as their involvement to an hourly type of thing, where if you need something written, like we were talking about the memo of understanding, you can say, we need you to make us a template for a memo of understanding between us and the municipality, and you need to tell us how many hours you think that's going to cost, or how many hours it's going to take you, how much it's going to cost, and then we'll pay that, and that'll be a discrete thing. They'll still be your attorney. You can still turn to them for more things like that, but it won't be an ongoing cost like that. That is a lot of times cost prohibitive for a lot of libraries, not even just smaller libraries. So yeah, that's it. I would stress the board's own attorney. You can have different ways to pay them for however long you want to have them there. And yeah, Michele, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Exactly right.
Good.
Okay, two more quick ones, I promise. Can relatives and council members?
We can stay here for longer if you guys want. I'm
Sure.
not I don't have anywhere to go.
Can relatives of council members be trustees?
Relatives of council members.
Not,
What's that?
not a best practice, but I don't think there's a law.
I was going to say that's the most New Jersey thing I've ever heard. But again, like Michele just said, there's no law against it. As long as the relative is not an employee of the municipality or a council member themselves, I don't see, there's nothing to prevent it.
That's what I thought, yeah. And one final one is that we have a last one on the list is, do you have examples of capital plans that that libraries can look at, or?
There is one on our website, yes.
Okay,
And I think there's a sample resolution on how to reserve capital funds too.
I think that's all in the packet, in the return of funds packet. So in case you haven't been paying attention to the chat, attendees, I have been putting links in the chat while we've been answering questions. And so we're going to save that chat, and hopefully our hosts will email it out to everybody so you can get those links if you can't copy them down right now or launch them and bookmark them. But one of the things was the location where the return of funds packet is. Just so you know, it's a link to a file, to a zip file that has all the documents compressed into it that you need to do the application for return of funds. One thing that we didn't touch on in the slides where we talked about that specifically was we recommend, well, let me backtrack. Usually it's your director that fills out this application. Sometimes they need your treasurer for some information or whatever, but usually the director has all this information and they fill it out, and then transmit it to us. The other thing that now I'm trying to remember what my other thing was. Return of funds. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. It was probably not important, probably something that we already touched on, and stuff. But if it comes to me and it's important, I'll let you all know.
I probably should have been listening to you better too.
What's that?
I probably should have been listening to you better too. I was looking at more questions.
It's okay. It was it's return of funds is really complicated, but but thankfully fewer and fewer libraries are doing it each year, and pretty much now, with the exception of one or two new ones each year, it's mostly shore towns. So towns that are down the shore. What's that?
I do have a thought on that. I mean,
Go
fewer
ahead.
are doing it, but I suspect that a lot of municipalities who don't understand the return of funds law just taking that money, and the trustees may not be aware that they cannot do so. So that there's really no way of us knowing. Somebody said, what can a trustee do to make the council understand about the return of excess funds when they've explained it so many times? Well, how about if we have DLGS contact them, or
Which we have contacted them about. So there's a Division of Local Government Services in the Department of Community Affairs. They are, if you don't know, they're responsible for approving municipal budgets. They analyze about a third of the municipalities every year, and if we are notified of something that is we believe warrants their investigation, we call them and put that on their radar, and they will add that to their list of municipalities to scrutinize.
Or if we do get an approval from the state librarian from the return of funds, we do notify DLGS, or Bob does.
Correct.
Okay, this has been an approved application, and you can let the library return funds. So DLGS does know. So, or you can have the CFO call us. We have, they have called us, and we have explained, that the whole process works. We're nice.
Sometimes, some of us.
And Bob, somebody wants your phone number. Helen wants your phone.
Unlisted. To be quite honest, I respond much better to email.
Yeah.
And even if that is an email, if you don't feel like putting your question in writing, even if that's an email to request me to call you back, that's probably going to get me a lot quicker than a phone call, and more reliably. So I'll put my the slides back up again. Where's the thingy? Hold on a second. Share screen.
A question, not a question. Foundations can be created as a separate nonprofit. Yes, just like friends groups, separate 501c3s.
Yep. So there's our contact information. You can email us any questions you have. Also, just so you know, since these are mostly new trustees or newish trustees, any kind of time you call us or contact us, it's totally confidential. I won't even acknowledge that I spoke to you unless you want me to. That being said, things that are put into an email become government documents and could be subject to an Open Public Records Act request, but conversations over the phone are not recorded. So
I also want to note there's a couple of questions in here. Part-time workers, can they join a union? Full-time worker, 35 hours a week. These are union questions, and these are things that we can't answer, that they have to be asked of the union.
And the full-time worker, 35 hours a week. So according to the state aid regulations, if you are a certified librarian, yes, you're full-time work week is 35 hours. However, if your support staff in any other way, any non-certified librarian working in the library, according to the state aid regulations, again, it may be different for other considerations, but for state aid, it's based on a 30-hour work week. So a little bit different. So that's it.
I found another one as well, and I skipped over.
It's okay.
Where can I read more about minimum staffing standards for a library?
I will. Okay. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna put the link in the chat in a second, but I want to go to the actual web page first. So this is the state library's website. Everybody sees that. You can go to Services for Libraries, Library Development Bureau, and then all the way down here to Library Law. Click on that. And then we're going to go down here to Part 4, State Aid to Libraries. And there's 2 links to look at. The State Library Aid Law is the statute that governs how state aid is paid, you know, how the legislature transfers funds to us. It's kind of, it's interesting, but it's not what libraries really need to know. What you need to know is the per capita state aid regulations. And these, and again, I'll put a link in the chat in a second, so you don't have to remember this. These are all of the minimum standards. And I'm just scrolling down here. I don't expect you to read them because there's a lot. All the minimum standards that we check that libraries are in compliance with, and we check that by the data that your director submits during the annual survey, and also with the application for state aid from the municipal CFO. So all of that data goes into our computer system, and we check it against these tables. And if your amounts for these are at the same or higher, you're okay. If they're lower, then we have a potential problem. And so it goes on with staff and library materials. This is important. There is on the books a regulation that regulates the number of periodicals a library must have. We don't enforce this anymore. All public libraries, all libraries, period, in the state receive EBSCOhost and other databases through Jersey Clicks from the state library. And the amount of periodicals in those more than satisfies this requirement. And probably when these regulations are up for renewal in 2 years, this is going to go away, I think. Then there's service hours, hours open to the public, number of days per week, evenings per week, weekend hours, et cetera, et cetera. Amount of training hours. This is training hours for the entire library, depending upon population, broken down by this antiquated term of professionals, which basically means certified librarians and all other staff. Of course, what isn't there, and is way up at the top, is the 7 hours, as we keep sounding like a broken record about this, 7 hours of mandatory training per board per year. It's extremely important because, as you'll see as we scroll down and get to the penalty phase of state aid, the only things that will trigger a 100% loss of state aid are trustee training, compliance with applicable statutes, which is kind of a check-all term to be, there's a compliance section up above that it's, you know, are you complying with all the statutes and things that govern your type of library, all the municipal public library statutes. And the library director is, if you're a library serving a town whose population is 7,500 or above, you must have one person who works full-time and is a certified librarian as the director. If you do not have that, it is a 100% loss of state aid. And then the rest of these are 50% losses in state aid, which can be, of course, combined, if you don't comply with multiple of them, to 100%. And just so you know, one thing we're dealing with right now, my colleague and I, is the exemption process, basically, for lack of a better word, that there is an appeals process for libraries that think that they were unjustly, that they have some explanation for their not achieving minimum standards for state aid. And they can apply to the state librarian, and she can look at their situation and say, we'll waive this minimum standard this year, or we won't. And it's totally up to her. So, like I said, let me put this in the chat. I'm actually, let me put just this. Okay. Okay. And okay. Everybody still awake?
Yep.
Did I bore anybody to sleep?
It's Tom again. I've looked and I don't see any new questions that have come up. Does anybody on the panel feel have they seen any questions that they feel I missed? Hey.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. I looked through them too, and I'm not seeing anything. But once again, if you have any questions that that you didn't put in, or that you did put in and we somehow missed, please email us.
Well, I want to take this time to thank Michele and Bob for a wonderful presentation and giving up a couple of hours of their time. Virtual applause for everybody. Thank you for being with us. I would also like to take just a couple of minutes to do some administrative goodies here. First of all, please, if you would, complete the evaluations for these programs. They are very important to this committee. It's how we design our programs. It's how we develop them, because we want to provide you what you want. And you can tell us through evaluations what you like, what you don't like, what you feel we ought to do in the future. So it's very important that you do that. As both Michele and Bob mentioned, the 7-hour requirement, you will receive few certificates in a few weeks. This program will grant you 1.5 hours towards your entire Board of Trustees requirement of the 7 hours. Also, if you haven't provided us with an email address, you could send it to us, and we will be able to not only give you more immediate access to what's coming up in the future, but we also will be providing you with newsletters of what the Trustee Development Committee is doing. And finally, just to let you know what's going on in the future, I want to mention 3 upcoming programs, 2 programs actually in a roundtable. On April 25th, we will be having a program on committees that are important to libraries, such as the Personnel Committee, Finance Committee, maybe Buildings and Grounds, Policy, and there's quite a few others that libraries will have, Strategic Planning. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that one. Capital planning. But so we will be having those on April 25th. On May 11th, we will also be having a strategic planning program. Both of these programs are live. The April 25th one on committees will be hosted by the River Edge Library. They go from 6 to 8:30. For the hour from 6 to 7 is a chance for you folks to network, and many of you will be meeting people for the first time, and for many of us it'll be re-meeting older friends that we haven't seen in 3 or 4 years, and it's a great opportunity to swap stories and get to know who's involved. That's on April 25th and May 11th. Then on May 24th, there will be a roundtable, which we're sponsoring, which will discuss relationships with your mayor and council, which came up during this program a number of times about how do I convince the mayor and council I need more money? And there's a lot of information on how to go about doing that. You don't just walk in and say, hey, I need $50,000. And also the relationships with our schools. It's important to have that with our elementary schools and our high schools, and working with our superintendent and or his or her representative. So that's what's coming up in the future. Again, thank you, Michele and Bob. Yes, Bob.
Sorry. So the first thing you were talking about, Tom, when you were just saying on that was, if I remember correctly, soliciting the people in here and other trustees for ideas for new programs or things like that. Was I reading that correctly or hearing that?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's on the a question on the evaluation form.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, we're trying to, one of the things we're trying to do with our directors and trustees check-ins in the new year is make them less of just like a blank Q&A, where people can come and just ask any questions, and kind of have definite topics, speakers if we're not qualified to speak on those topics, and then dovetail that with, say you have the presentation on a pertinent, topic at the beginning of the month, and then have a second program towards the end of the month as like a discussion, an open discussion of that previous topic that was presented on. So kind of once it's had a time to percolate through people's minds and they can do some research, that we can all kind of talk about it and things like that. But the important thing is getting some ideas for what people really want to know about. Because I'm sorry, Michele, what?
Wouldn't mind sharing. I agree with Bob. Those were some great programs you're putting on. I think you said they were all live though. They're all going to be in-person events. Tom,
Was that correct, Tom?
I'm sorry. Say it again, please.
All the events that you listed, they all sound wonderful, but those are all in-person events up in North Jersey.
No, the two on committees and on strategic planning will be in person. One will be in the committee, one will be in our River Edge, and one will be in our favorite place, Hasbrook Heights. Mimi will be hosting that one. But the roundtable will still be virtual.
Mimi, if there's events that you're doing with trustees that are virtual, if you wouldn't mind someone from the state library sitting in and just seeing what you're doing and maybe stealing some ideas from you to present to the rest of the state, I would love to know about it. So just put
That's fantastic. We would be more than happy to have you.
Yeah, we're always looking for
Absolutely.
Terrific. Thank you so much for volunteering, because that's great. We will certainly let you know what's coming up, and
thank you.
You just let us know if you want to show up, and we'll be happy to have you. That's great.
It'll probably be me showing up since Michele lives.
That's right. I'm not in South Jersey. I'm in Pennsylvania now.
Yeah, you're in Philadelphia. So
oh yeah, that's a bit of a hike.
I'm the second most north of all the state library employees.
I would
so
definitely come to any virtual events that you have, because you had some great ideas there. I'd like to steal some of those for the rest of our trustees in the state.
Michele, we will certainly keep you apprised of everything.
So I've been answering in the chat some questions while everyone's been talking about making sure that the slide deck and the recording are provided to the attendees, and I've been saying yes for you all, so I hope that's okay.
Sure.
And so I know I sent the slide deck to Mimi, and we'll see how this cloud recording thing works out with Caitlin and my Zoom accounts, and hopefully it works. And yeah, what's that?
We'll say good night at 9 o'clock, and thank you again for having us.
Yes.
It's always a
Oh,
pleasure.
of course.
To be
Yep.
here.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you very much.
And I
No
want to
problem.
also just thank we had almost 100 participants tonight.
That's
And I
great.
want to thank all of you for taking your time to, to come and visit and be with us. And hopefully you learned a lot because there was an awful lot of good information. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Don't forget, Lipinski, I promise you, you will figure.
Yeah, the link will be in the slides, or you can look in the news section of the State Library website and click that. It's going to be one for the ages.